He took her baby in as his own, never realizing she had awakened his heart's deepest desire. He was the kind of man people trusted without asking why. His life followed a quiet routine: wake early, work hard, come home tired, repeat. He did not complain, and he did not expect much from the world. Years ago, he had learned that hopes could be heavy things. When you carried them too long, they turned into disappointments. So he lived carefully, keeping his emotions under control, staying within the safe borders of responsibility. He had once believed in love. That belief had faded slowly, not in one painful moment, but through many small ones: broken promises, misunderstandings, and silence where words should have been. After that, he chose stability over feelings. He built his life on duty, not dreams. People admired him for that. They said he was strong, dependable, a good man. But very few knew how lonely his evenings felt, or how empty his house sounded when the door closed behind him. Then one evening, everything changed. She arrived without warning, standing at his doorway with tired eyes and a baby held close to her chest. The child was wrapped in an old blanket, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm that had led them there. She looked like someone who had walked a long road without rest. Her clothes were simple, her hands slightly shaking, not from fear alone but from exhaustion. He did not recognize her at first. It took a moment before memory caught up with him. She was someone he had known years ago, not closely, but enough to remember her kindness and quiet nature. Back then, she had been full of life, smiling easily. Now that smile was gone, replaced by caution and worry. She did not ask for help immediately. She stood there unsure, as if ready to turn back at any moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost apologetic. She said she had nowhere else to go. Life had taken a turn she never expected, and every door she knocked on had closed. He listened without interrupting, his eyes moving briefly to the baby and back to her face. He could have said no. He knew that. He knew letting her in would change his life in ways he could not control. He knew people would talk. He knew responsibility would grow heavier. And yet something in him refused to turn her away. It was not love, not then. It was something simpler and stronger: compassion. He stepped aside and let them enter. That decision, made in silence, would shape everything that followed. That night he gave her the spare room. He prepared warm food, though he barely spoke. She ate slowly, carefully, as if afraid the comfort might disappear if she moved too fast. The baby woke and cried softly, and she held the child with a natural ease that spoke of long nights and quiet strength. He watched from a distance, unsure why his chest felt tight. Before going to bed, he told her she could stay for a while, just until she figured things out. He made it sound temporary, safe, controlled. She thanked him, her eyes filling with tears she tried hard to hide. He turned away before she could say more. That night, sleep did not come easily. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of the house: footsteps, a baby's soft breathing, the unfamiliar presence of another life under his roof. His mind filled with questions. Who was the child's father? Why had she not asked him for help before? How long would this situation last? But deeper than the questions was something else, a quiet awareness that his carefully ordered life had already shifted. The days that followed were awkward at first. They moved around each other politely, like strangers sharing a space. She cleaned, cooked, and kept to herself. He left early and returned late, telling himself he was just busy. Yet every evening he found his eyes searching for signs of them: an empty cup on the table, toys neatly placed in a corner, the sound of the baby laughing softly. He told himself he was only being practical. A child needed stability. A mother needed time. That was all. Still, he found himself buying small things on his way home: diapers, warm clothes, simple toys. He left them quietly, never making a show of it. She thanked him each time, her gratitude sincere but careful, as if she did not want to ask for more than he offered. People around him began to notice changes. His coworkers mentioned he seemed distracted. A neighbor asked questions he did not answer. He avoided explanations. The truth felt too complicated to share, even with himself. One afternoon, he came home early and found the baby crying. She was pacing the room, clearly overwhelmed, whispering soft words that did not seem to help. Without thinking, he stepped forward and held the child. The crying stopped almost immediately. The baby looked up at him with wide, curious eyes, then rested against his chest. Something inside him shifted. It was a small moment, almost unnoticeable from the outside, but for him it was powerful. He had never held a child like that before, not with responsibility, not with care that mattered. The weight in his arms felt strange but not unwelcome. She watched him closely, surprised. Their eyes met, and for a brief second the space between them felt different, lighter, warmer. Neither of them spoke. Words were unnecessary and maybe too dangerous. From that day on, his role changed quietly. He did not announce it. He did not make promises. He simply showed up. He learned the baby's routine. He listened when she spoke about her fears, though she never shared everything. He respected her silence and did not push for answers. In his mind, he kept repeating the same rule: this is not love. This is duty. But rules are fragile things when real life tests them. At night, when the house finally fell silent, he would sit alone and think. He thought about how easily the baby smiled at him, about how her presence filled the rooms that once felt empty, about how her laughter reached places in his heart he believed were closed forever. He did not realize it yet, but something had already awakened inside him, something deep, something patient, something he had buried long ago. For now, he believed he was simply doing the right thing, and that belief was enough to keep him moving forward, unaware that his heart had already begun to change. Life slowly settled into a new rhythm, though none of them planned it that way. What had started as a temporary arrangement began to feel like something steady, almost normal. Mornings were no longer silent. The baby's soft sounds filled the house before sunrise, followed by her quiet footsteps as she moved around, trying not to disturb him. He would wake earlier than usual, listening from his room, pretending he was still asleep while his mind adjusted to this new reality. At first, he stayed distant. He believed distance would protect everyone. He focused on work, taking on extra hours, telling himself he needed to stay busy. But even at work, his thoughts wandered. He found himself wondering if the baby had slept well, if she was eating properly, if the house felt warm enough. These thoughts annoyed him. He reminded himself again and again that this was not his responsibility. Yet his actions slowly began to say otherwise. She tried her best not to become a burden. She cleaned the house carefully, cooked simple meals, and kept everything organized. She spoke only when necessary and always with politeness. Inside, she carried a constant fear that one day he would ask her to leave. Every smile from him felt like a gift she did not deserve. Every quiet moment felt like a warning. The baby, however, lived freely. The child smiled without fear, laughed without hesitation, and reached out with tiny hands, trusting the world completely. That trust slowly changed him. He noticed how the baby calmed when he entered the room, how the child's eyes followed him, curious and unafraid. He told himself it was nothing, just familiarity, but deep inside he felt something he had not felt in a long time, needed. Evenings became the most meaningful part of the day. He would return home tired, expecting the usual silence, but instead he found warmth. The smell of food, the sound of soft humming, the gentle chaos of a living space shared by others. Sometimes he would sit quietly, watching her feed the baby, noticing how carefully she handled every small task. There was strength in her movements, even when she was exhausted. They talked more now, though still carefully. Conversation stayed on safe topics, the baby's habits, the weather, daily tasks. She never spoke about her past, and he never asked. Both of them carried wounds, and both knew that touching them too soon could cause pain. He began helping without realizing it. He held the baby while she rested. He learned how to warm milk, how to rock gently, how to calm restless cries. At first, he felt awkward, unsure of himself. But with time, his movements became confident. The baby trusted him completely, resting against his chest as if it was the most natural place in the world. These moments confused him. He had built his life on control and independence. Now, his heart reacted before his mind. He felt protective, alert, aware of dangers he had never considered before. When the baby laughed, something inside him relaxed. When the baby cried, something inside him tightened. She noticed the change. She saw how he softened around the child, how his voice became gentler, how his eyes held warmth he did not show elsewhere. It made her grateful and afraid. Gratitude because he cared. Fear because caring always came with risk. People outside their home began to notice too. Neighbors asked questions. Some looked with curiosity, others with judgment. She kept her head down, avoiding attention. He ignored the whispers. He had lived his life being judged before, and he had learned not to explain himself. One afternoon, while he was at work, she felt overwhelmed. The baby was restless, crying more than usual. Her body felt heavy with tiredness, her thoughts crowded with worry. For a brief moment, fear returned, the old fear of being alone, unsupported. When he came home that evening and saw her tired face, something broke through his careful walls. He did not ask questions. He simply took the baby from her arms and told her to rest. His voice was calm but firm, leaving no room for refusal. She hesitated, then nodded. As she lay down, tears quietly slipped from her eyes, not from sadness but from relief. That night, as he sat holding the sleeping child, he felt the weight of responsibility fully settle on him, not as a burden but as a presence. He realized he was no longer acting out of kindness alone. Something deeper was guiding him now. Still, he refused to name it. He told himself this was temporary, that one day she would stand on her own again, that the baby would grow and life would move forward. He believed planning for an ending would protect him from pain, but every day made that ending harder to imagine. She slowly began to feel safer. The house no longer felt like a place she might lose overnight. She smiled more, laughed softly when the baby did something funny. Sometimes she would catch him watching her, and their eyes would meet. In those moments, both felt something unspoken pass between them, something gentle and dangerous at the same time. Neither of them dared to cross that invisible line. He remained convinced that his feelings were misplaced concern, that he was simply responding to routine and familiarity. Love, he believed, was loud and obvious. What he felt was quiet, steady, and confusing. At night, when everyone slept, he often sat alone with his thoughts. He remembered the life he once imagined, simple, controlled, free of emotional risk. That life felt distant now. In its place was something warmer, fuller, but uncertain. He did not know it yet, but his heart was already choosing. And the more he tried to ignore it, the deeper it quietly grew. By the time the baby began to crawl, the house no longer felt like a place he was sharing. It felt like a place he belonged to. The change happened so slowly that he did not notice it at first. What he did notice were small things. How he listened for the baby's sounds even when he was outside the house. How he planned his work hours around coming home earlier. How the silence he once enjoyed now felt empty when the baby was asleep. He told himself this was normal. Anyone living under the same roof would feel this way. Anyone helping raise a child would grow attached. There was nothing special about it, nothing dangerous, but his heart did not agree. One evening, he came home to find her sitting on the floor, the baby playing beside her. She was laughing softly, freely. It was not the polite smile she used with others. It was real, unprotected. The sound stopped him in his tracks. For a moment, he simply stood there, watching. The light from the window touched her face, and something inside him tightened. He realized suddenly and clearly that he liked seeing her happy. That thought unsettled him. He moved away quietly, pretending he needed to wash his hands. His reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar. The man staring back at him seemed softer, less guarded. He did not like that. Softness had cost him before. From that day, he began to fight his own feelings. He kept conversations short. He avoided sitting too close. He focused on the baby instead of her, convincing himself that his concern was only about the child's well-being. Yet the more he tried to pull back, the more aware he became of her presence, her quiet strength, her tired patience, the way she always put the baby's needs before her own. She noticed the distance. At first, she thought she had done something wrong. She replayed her words, her actions, searching for a mistake. The fear she had pushed aside slowly returned. She reminded herself not to expect too much. This was never meant to be permanent. He had helped her out of kindness, nothing more. Still, the change hurt. She became quieter again, more careful. She spent more time in her room, giving him space he did not ask for but somehow created. He noticed the silence immediately. It bothered him more than he expected. He missed her voice, her presence in the shared spaces, even her small questions about daily things. One night the baby cried for a long time. She tried everything, rocking, whispering, walking, but nothing worked. He listened from his room, his chest tight with worry. Finally, he stepped in. Without a word, he took the baby into his arms. The crying slowly faded. She watched him, exhaustion clear in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, as if the baby's restlessness was her fault. He looked at her then, really looked. He saw how tired she was, how much she carried alone. Something inside him cracked. He wanted to tell her she did not need to apologize, that she was doing her best, that she was not alone. Instead, he only nodded and said, "You should sleep." It was enough to make her eyes fill with tears. That night, after she went to bed, he stayed awake, holding the baby longer than necessary. His thoughts were loud and restless. He could no longer deny the truth. His feelings were not just concern. They were not just habit. He cared for her. That realization frightened him more than anything else had in years. Caring meant risk. Caring meant the possibility of loss. He had promised himself he would never let his heart reach that far again. And yet here it was, stretching quietly without permission. The next days were filled with tension neither of them spoke about. He struggled between wanting to protect himself and wanting to be close to her. She struggled between gratitude and guilt, afraid that staying longer might cause pain for both of them. She began to prepare herself for leaving. She did not announce it. She simply started planning in silence, saving small amounts of money, looking for opportunities, telling herself that independence was the safest path. Every time she imagined walking out that door, her chest ached, not because of fear, but because of something deeper she refused to name. She had grown attached too. One afternoon, while organizing old boxes, she found a photo from her past. She stared at it for a long time, then quietly folded it away. The life she once imagined was gone. The life she was living now felt fragile, borrowed. He noticed the changes, the way she seemed distant, thoughtful, distracted. The idea of her leaving suddenly felt unbearable. He did not understand why. He told himself it was because the baby needed stability. That was the logical explanation. But logic felt weak against the weight in his chest. One evening, as they sat in the same room but different corners, he finally spoke. He asked if she was planning to go somewhere. The question surprised them both. His voice was steady, but his heart was not. She hesitated. Then she nodded slowly. She said she did not want to stay forever. She did not want to cause trouble or expectations. She said she was grateful for everything more than words could express. Every word felt like a quiet goodbye. He listened, silent, his thoughts racing. Part of him wanted to agree, to let things end before they became more complicated. Another part wanted to stop her, to ask her to stay, to admit what he felt. But fear won. He told her he understood, that she should do what was best for her and the baby. The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted them. That night, neither of them slept. She cried quietly in her room, holding the baby close, telling herself she was doing the right thing. He sat alone in the living room, staring at the wall, feeling like he had just let something precious slip through his fingers. For the first time, he admitted the truth to himself. He did not just care. He had fallen in love without realizing when or how. And now, the fear of losing her was stronger than the fear of loving her. But understanding something does not always mean knowing what to do. As the night stretched on, he wondered if he still had time to choose differently, or if his silence had already decided everything for him. The days that followed felt heavier than all the weeks before. Even though nothing had changed on the surface, everything felt different inside the house. Words were spoken less, and silence filled the spaces where warmth once lived. She moved quietly, careful not to disturb him. He noticed every small movement, every pause, every look she avoided. It felt like watching something slowly slip away while standing completely still. She continued preparing for the future she believed she had to face alone. She folded clothes more neatly than before, sorted small items, and packed things in a way that did not attract attention. Each time she touched something in the house, her heart tightened. These walls had given her safety when she had nothing. Leaving them felt like tearing herself away from something that had begun to feel like home. The baby sensed the change. The laughter became less frequent, and restless nights returned. The child cried more often, reaching out with small hands as if searching for comfort that could not be named. She held the baby close, whispering soft words, trying to stay strong. She reminded herself that this was temporary, that children adjusted, that life moved on. But she was tired in a way sleep could not fix. He watched all of this quietly. Every packed item felt like a warning. Every avoided glance felt like a loss. He wanted to speak, to ask her to stop, to tell her everything he had kept buried, but fear held his voice hostage. Fear told him that if he spoke, he might hear a truth he was not ready for. Fear told him that loving her meant risking everything he had rebuilt. And so, he stayed silent. One afternoon, something happened that broke the fragile balance. While he was at work, the baby fell ill, not seriously but enough to cause worry. She tried to stay calm, but panic crept in. She had faced many hardships alone before, but this felt different. This time, help was close, yet she did not know if she was allowed to reach for it. She called him. Her voice was shaking when he answered. The moment he heard it, his chest tightened. He left work without hesitation. By the time he reached home, she was pacing the room, holding the baby tightly, tears running down her face. The sight stopped him cold. He did not ask questions. He took the baby into his arms, checking carefully, speaking softly, steady and calm. His presence alone seemed to ease the situation. The baby slowly settled, breathing becoming smoother. She sank onto a chair, her strength finally giving way. In that moment, all her walls fell. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I don't know how to do this alone." The words hit him harder than anything else ever had. Alone. That was the word he could not ignore. He looked at her then, truly looked at her, not as someone he was helping, not as a temporary responsibility, but as a woman carrying more weight than anyone should. He realized that his silence had been hurting her. His distance had not protected her. It had only made her feel abandoned. That night, the truth could no longer be avoided. After the baby fell asleep, they sat in the living room. The air felt thick with everything they had not said. He finally spoke, his voice quiet but honest. He admitted that the thought of her leaving frightened him. He admitted that he had tried to push his feelings away, believing it was the right thing to do. She listened in silence, her heart pounding. Then she spoke too. She confessed that she had never planned to stay forever, not because she did not care, but because she was afraid of needing him too much. She said she had learned the hard way that relying on others often led to pain. She did not want to become a burden. She did not want to take something that was never meant for her. They both realized something important in that moment. They were protecting themselves in opposite ways and hurting each other in the process. Still, understanding did not bring immediate peace. Questions remained. Doubts lingered. What would people say? Could this really work? Was love enough to carry the weight of responsibility that already existed? The world outside their home seemed ready to judge. Whispers grew louder. People questioned his choices, his intentions. Some doubted her, others doubted him. The pressure built slowly, pressing in from all sides. She felt it deeply. She worried that staying would damage his reputation, his peace, his future. She worried that loving her would cost him too much. And so, even after that honest conversation, she did not unpack her bags. He noticed, and this time he could not ignore it. One evening, as she prepared to leave for a short walk, he stopped her. His voice was firm, but his hands were shaking. He told her that taking care of the baby had never felt like an obligation. That being there for her had changed him in ways he did not understand at first. That love had grown quietly, without asking permission. She stood frozen, tears filling her eyes. He told her that love was a choice and he was choosing it. Still, fear lingered between them. Love did not erase uncertainty. It did not promise an easy road, but it offered something stronger than fear: honesty. She asked him one question, the one that mattered most. What happens if this becomes too hard? He did not answer immediately. Then he said something simple, something real. Then we face it together. That answer changed everything. She did not leave that night, but the storm was not over yet. The final test came when the baby's past returned in a way neither of them expected. Questions arose, pressure increased. The stability they had built felt threatened. Once again, the possibility of separation stood in front of them. This time, though, he did not step back. He stood firm. He realized that love was not just about feelings. It was about standing still when everything tried to pull you away. It was about choosing the same people every day, even when the world questioned your reasons. As the days passed, they both understood something clearly. What began as compassion had grown into commitment, and even though the future remained uncertain, one truth could no longer be denied. Letting go would hurt far more than holding on. The question now was not whether love existed. It was whether they were brave enough to protect it together. Morning light entered the house gently, as if it knew something important had changed. The silence no longer felt heavy. It felt calm. She woke early, not because the baby cried, but because her mind was full. For the first time in a long while, the future did not feel like a dark road she had to walk alone. It still felt uncertain, but it no longer felt empty. He was already awake. She found him in the kitchen, moving quietly, preparing something simple. When he saw her, he paused. There was no tension in his eyes now, no distance, only honesty. They shared a small smile, one that carried more meaning than any words. The baby woke soon after, cheerful and unaware of how much love surrounded them. He lifted the child easily, naturally, as if he had always belonged in that role. Watching him, she felt something warm settle in her chest. Not excitement, not fear, peace. They did not rush anything. Love did not suddenly turn life perfect. There were still questions, still worries, still days when doubt returned quietly. But now they spoke. They did not let silence decide for them anymore. He told her about his past, the reasons he had built walls, the losses that had taught him to be careful with his heart. She listened without judgment, understanding that pain shapes people in ways they do not always choose. She shared her own story too, the mistakes, the moments of fear, the strength she did not know she had until life demanded it. Trust grew slowly, like something alive. There were challenges. People talked. Some questioned his decision. Some looked at her with curiosity or doubt. He stood steady through it all. He did not explain himself. He did not defend love with words. He defended it with actions, with consistency, patience, and care. One evening, after a long day, she asked him something that had been sitting in her heart. She asked if he ever regretted taking them in. The question surprised him, but he understood why she needed to ask. He answered without hesitation. "No," he said, "it's the best choice I ever made." The truth in his voice left no room for doubt. Over time, the house became fuller, not with things but with moments, shared meals, quiet laughter, late-night talks when the baby finally slept, hard days that ended with comfort instead of loneliness. They learned how to lean on each other without losing themselves. The baby grew stronger, more curious, more confident. The child's laughter filled every corner of the house, turning it into something alive. He watched closely, realizing that love was not something he had lost in the past. It was something he had been preparing for without knowing it. One afternoon, as they sat together watching the baby play, he spoke again, carefully. He told her that being a family was not about blood or obligation. It was about choosing each other, again and again, even when it was hard. She nodded, tears quietly filling her eyes. She had spent so long believing she had to earn safety, earn kindness, earn love. Now she understood that love could also be given freely and received without fear. The final step did not come with a grand moment. There was no dramatic promise, no public announcement. It came quietly, one day at a time. She unpacked the last of her bags. He cleared space not just in the house, but in his plans, his future, his heart. They chose each other in the simplest way, by staying. One evening, as the baby slept between them, he held her hand and spoke words that mattered more than any promise. He told her that she had awakened something in him he thought was gone forever. Not desire in the shallow sense, but a deep need to protect, to care, to build something lasting. She rested her head on his shoulder, knowing that love like this did not shout. It whispered. It stayed. Life continued. There were challenges ahead, just like for everyone else. But they faced them together now, not as separate people sharing space, but as a family shaped by choice, patience, and quiet courage. In the end, what changed his life was not a sudden feeling or a dramatic moment. It was a simple act of kindness that opened his heart. He took her baby in as his own, believing he was only helping. He never realized that in doing so, he had found the love he never knew he was searching for. And she, once afraid of needing anyone, learned that sometimes the safest place is not standing alone, but standing beside someone who chooses you every single day.